All right, so we're getting pretty close here for the season finale. So let's continue with the rewrite of Game of Thrones. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW.
Super Dario World!
It's a me,
Dario!
Woohoo! Let's go!
All right, so let me just get this thing out of the way real quick. I opened up a Facebook fan page. You can find it, Super Dario World, on Facebook. Or I also opened an Instagram page. You can find it, Super Dario World, on Instagram. Everything else, you can find the podcast, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Podcast, everywhere, man. You can find it freaking everywhere, all right? In the iHeartRadio app, everywhere. So I'm just going to skip that. Any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can still, if you want to reach out to me at Dario the Show, you can still do that. Just, it would be easier if you go to the other one. Anyway, so let's get into this because we're getting close to the end and I kind of have a lot to cover. So let's continue with the rewrite of Game of Thrones. All right, so last episode, where we last left off, Bran and Jon got into a kind of heated argument where Bran tried to take over Ghost. He tried to warg into Ghost, and both Jon and Ghost did not appreciate that. That led to a fight where Jon almost, did Bran in, and so he sent him like the hell out of there. So Bran decided, you know what, it's time to go to the Night's Watch and check out the lead that Sam sent us. Like Jon needs some alone time, you know what I'm saying, to deal with his own demons. So that's where we left them, and let's just pick it up from there, right? So Jon is in his office. He's still kind of pissed off. He's still stomping around, but we left him when he was trying to actually, for the first time, go into Ghost and kind of admit to himself that he has that ability and he can control it, which he did. So after calming down, because realizing that the reason why, he was upset with what Bran said is because he was right, he calmed down a little and he asked one of his brothers of the Night's Watch, specifically he asked for Dolores Ed. You might remember Dolores. He's probably the only member of the Night's Watch that's left alive that you might know from the show. Anyway, that guy, he was a friend from season 1. Anyway, he asked that guy to find Bran, and he tells him, oh yeah, I saw him leave with the Brother Without Banners and Mira a little while ago. They were going to the Nightfort. And so Jon was like, all right, okay, do me a favor and just catch up with him and keep an eye on my brother. All right, just you grab another brother and just keep an eye on him. All right. So Dolores said agrees, and he runs right out of there. Right. So Jon's still trying to figure out what exactly he's going to do, because he's right now waiting for information and scouting reports and such. And so he decides he just keeps looking at his sword, right? He keeps looking at Longclaw, and he decides to go and give a visit to Jorah Mormont, who's in the library. So he arrives at the library. Jorah's there. He's going through some stuff, kind of eagerly, but it's still he's in a bit of pain because, again, grayscale. Jorah still has grayscale. It's painful for him to move sometimes. And so they have a conversation, politeness stuff. And Jon basically brings up the fact that he wants to return his father, because he starts talking about Jorah Mormont's father, Jeor Mormont, how he was like a father to him, and he wanted to return the sword because the sword belongs to his house and all that stuff. And Jorah basically tells Jon if he's correct, like if you are correct, Jon Snow, then the sword will do more good here in your hands than back in Bear Island. So Jon accepts to keep wielding the sword in his house's name, and they start talking a little bit about Sam. He's there in the books, he's doing research, and Jon realized that the reason why he actually went there is because the person that he always went to for counsel and stuff like that was Sam, and Sam was usually always in the library, and so that's kind of he kind of realized that in that moment, and Jorah met Sam, and so they bond a little bit about that, and he told them that Sam told them what happened at Craster's Keep, his father's death, and all that stuff. And so they start having, let's just say, a pleasant conversation that leads into some other more interesting topics. Now, these topics are stuff that Jorah had started researching, and it casually began with Jorah asking Jon, like, why do you guys call the Night King the Night King? Because the Night King was an actual dude, and he was a member of the Night's Watch. Why'd you give that guy that name? And Jon basically says, like, oh, it's after Hardhome. That's what the wildlings started calling him, and so the name just stuck. It's probably because then the Long Night is coming, and they associated, and the King of the Long Night was probably too long, so they just started calling him the Night King. Also, because the Night King is kind of a boogeyman figure for a lot of the people of the North, also Beyond the Wall. So it probably just stuck for those reasons. And Jorah was like, all right, okay, that's interesting. And he says that, the reason why it's interesting is because Sam specifically asks him to come here and start doing research about the Nightfort, which is directly related to the Nightfort, which is now, as he's finding out, directly related to other stuff. What kind of stuff that is? Well, I'll get back to that. I'm going to put a pin on that conversation, and I'm going to move on to the other Stark brother, all right? Well, Bran. So Bran is, along with Meera, the Hound, and the Brotherhood Without Banners, which is Thoros of Myr, Beric Dondarrion, and just a few other red shirts. A few other red shirts that are with him. They're traveling on the way to the Nightfort, right? And so people have some questions, and particularly the Hound, he's from the south. Well, most of them are from the south, and they have questions about what the Nightfort is. And Bran grew up with all the stories of the Nightfort and all the horror stories. He liked the scary stories, and so he shared with them a little bit of it. And so now I'm going to share with you some of the stories from the Nightfort, which will become relevant. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of crazy tales that came from the Nightfort, okay? So it started off with not with the Night King. It started off with the location where the Nightfort is before the wall was built. Supposedly is where the Warg King was the leader of. He was the king of that area. Now, for those of you who don't know what a warg is a person who can go into an animal's brain, basically, and take control of them. Now, some wargs, like Bran, have proven that they can go into people's brains as well and take control of them. But here, we're talking about the Warg King, who supposedly was allied with the Children of the Forest. And so these the Warg King and the Children of the Forest were eventually defeated by the Starks of Winterfell. And then afterwards, when the wall went up, that was the location where they built the Nightfort, right? So they built the Nightfort in this location, which used to be part of the Warg King's reign, or the Warg King's kingdom. And then a few years later, after the wall was built, there was a man known only as the Night King. Now, again, the Nightfort is the oldest and largest castle in the Night's Watch, the biggest by far. And so that was the seat of the commander of the Night's Watch. And the 13th commander of the Night's Watch, well, I can just I'm just going to read you a story, all right? So he was a fearless warrior named the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Later, he fell in love with a woman with skin as white as moon and eyes like blue stars. He chased her and loved her, though her skin was cold as ice. And when he gave his seed to her, he gave his soul as well. The Night's King brought her back to the Nightfort, and after an unholy union, he declared himself king and her queen, and ruled the Nightfort as his own castle for 13 years. So the number 13 has a lot of relevance here. 13th commander, 13 years, all that stuff. Won't really get into it. That's more book stuff. Doesn't really matter. Point is, the Night's King, which was a dude who supposedly married somebody who sounded a lot like either a zombie or a White Walker or an other. Again, for those of you who don't remember, The others are the people who control the White Walkers. The White Walkers are the zombies. In the show, they just blend them all together. But the others are the necromancers, and the White Walkers are the zombies. So, again, let me just read her description. With skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. Skin as cold as ice. Anyway, so that's her description. So supposedly the Night's King kind of got maybe enchanted, maybe he fell in love, maybe he was being possessed, we don't really know, or controlled, we don't really know. Maybe he was just, into her. I don't know. But here's the interesting thing. So supposedly a bunch of atrocities happened while he declared himself king of that area. And as you can imagine, the kings beyond the king beyond the wall and the king of winter to the south, they did not really like this dude. And so they united. The king of winter and the king beyond the wall both joined forces, and they were able to defeat the Night King, right? And after they defeated him, they discovered that he had been making sacrifices to the others. So the Night King had been doing sacrifice to the others. And when this was discovered, that's when all records of him and his name, all records of his name were destroyed. They were forbidden, forgotten, and destroyed, right? Or at least everything they could find. So it's probably the reason why this is not really the show stuff, so I'll just skip it. Anyway, so there's a lot of legends about this dude, and Bran shares them with the Brotherhood Without Banners and with the Hound, and they're like, "Whoa, that's kind of interesting. Why you would call the same conversation that they had? Why would they call him the Night's King if there's the enemy, the Night's King? Why would they call him that if there was already one? He was a member of the Night's Watch, and apparently he was making sacrifices to the others. It's kind of weird." And Bran gives them their theory, and he says, well, I'll just read a quote from this. Is again exactly from the book. All right. Night's King was only a man by the light of day, old Nan always says, but the night was his to rule. So basically, the long night is coming, and it could be a way that everybody started to associating them. Basically the same thing that Jon said, only just via the words of old Nan, who was Jon's nanny. Now, so that's, okay, we've gone through the Warg King into the story of the Night's King. Now, other atrocities happened at the Nightfort. There's the story of a brave Dany Flint, who is a girl who decided to dress up as a boy and who wanted to be a member of the Night's Watch, right? She was brave, she was a good fighter, but the moment that they discovered that she was a woman, she got raped and murdered. So the story of brave Dany Flint is kind of a sad one. There's also the story of the 79 Sentinels. So there was 79 members of the Night's Watch that were in the Nightfort that deserted. So 79 deserters of the Nightfort. And so when they were caught in the south, they were sent back to the wall, and they carved a hole, 79 holes in the wall, put them in there, and sealed them. That way, it's, I'll read the quote. They left their posts in life, so in death, their watch goes on forever. So there's the story of those dudes there. And as they're sharing stories and, scary stories going into the Nightfort, Thoros of Myr, again, Thoros of Myr is the Red Priest. He's the dude with one of the dudes with the fire swords. There's two dudes with fire swords, Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr. Thoros of Myr is the guy that gave him the kiss of life, right? He's the reason why Beric Dondarrion is there. So Thoros of Myr starts to get in on the conversation with Bran, and he asks a few questions. And so he wants to talk to him about the controlling of bodies, and he wants to see what is it that he feels, what is it that's going on, because the Lord of Light, Roller, when he brings somebody back to life, he with the kiss of life, he's returning life to them. So it's not like he's animating the dead. He's actually giving them life once again, right? And on the other hand, from what he's heard from the Night King, the others, again, I'm calling I'm calling the Night King the king of the others just because it's easier for people who watch the show. From what he's heard from them is that he reanimates objects. So they're not really alive. He's just animating them. It's through his will. So they're 100% of his control. So Rolor gives them life and free will again. The Night King brings them to life, and they're slaves to his will. So from what he's heard or understands of Bran's powers, he can go into the minds of other of living beings and take control of them. So is it possible for him to also do it with inanimate and with dead beings? And it seems like it'd be easier because living beings have a will of their own, and so they don't want to be controlled. However, dead objects won't fight back. So it seems like it would be easier for him to do so. Now, this is when the conversation starts taking kind of an uncomfortable turn, and Mira starts holding her spear a little bit more tightly, and her eyes start to narrow a little bit more, and she's starting to realize that she is vastly outnumbered. The Hound, on the other hand, is kind of unsure where he stands, because he got up there with the Brotherhood Without Banners, but killing this little kid also kind of for no reason, it kind of seems kind of weird. But if this kid is a problem, then he'll do it. So things are starting to get a little bit awkward, and Bran also begins to realize this. Right? He's doing the math, and he's not liking what he's seeing in his head. So he's starting to consider the possibility of maybe trying to attack the other people's brains right now. So let's just say tensions are getting higher. And so Thoros just continues talking, and he starts telling him about Rolor. Like, he is a servant of the Lord of Light. Is his enemy? He's the life is warm, fire is warm, and that's why they worship fire. That is his tool. Light is his tool. That's the greatest gift they can give him. That they give him humanity. His enemy, however, is called the Great Other. Now, this is the first time that Bran has heard the Great Other, the term the Great Other, but it immediately sparks a ding in the back of his head because, again, he knows the legends of the others, and he's kind of seen them in person. So his enemy, the darkness, the Great Other, he works in the shadows, in the darkness. That's where death is cold, and that's where everything is. So Bran starts to realize that he was kind of trained and he remembers words from the Three-Eyed Raven, and the Three-Eyed Raven told him that actually I think I can probably just read it for you. Where is it? Doesn't really matter. I'll find it eventually. Oh yeah, he sat. I'll just read the quote again, straight from the book. There he sat, listening to the hoarse whispers of his teacher. Never fear the darkness, Bran. The Lord's words were accompanied with a faint rustling of wood and leaf, a slight twisting of his head. The strongest trees are rooted in the dark places of the earth. Darkness will be your cloak, your shield, your mother's milk. Darkness will make you strong. So that thing, that phrase specifically comes to the top of Bran's head as he's hearing Thoros and Mir talk about the darkness, the Great Other, and all that stuff. And Thoros just continues talking, trying to read Bran's face, and he's reading a lot from it. As he sees that the fear coming into him, and not just fear, the anger, kind of like, okay, the fact that he's getting ready to fight back, Thoros takes a step back and he says that his role is yet uncertain. He's not an enemy yet. His role is yet uncertain. And he confesses that Melisandre saw him in her flames. Well, not him specifically, or maybe him. He saw a three-eyed raven and a boy with a wolf's head sitting at his feet, and he thought that they were the champions of the Great Other, the same way that Stannis was her champion for the Lord of Light. However, she was wrong about that. So it's she was wrong about Stannis, so it's possible that she was wrong about them too. But The future and Bran's role in it is still uncertain, and it may be that he has, he was trained to become the other's champion, only to become his greatest foe. However, it is possible that he'll also be the death of them all. Only Roller can decide. And so he leaves it with the, I'll be keeping an eye on you, right? Which is fair. And Thor keeps on moving. And the Brotherhood keeps on moving. And Mira kind of was able to relax a little. And as she's relaxing a little, she was there too. She witnessed pretty much the whole shebang. And she also starts wondering to, what the hell were we actually doing beyond the wall? Why were we there? And are we actually on the right side? So, we'll conclude that. We'll conclude them with Dolores Ed catches up to them, and they make it to the Nightfort. So we're gonna leave them there. We're gonna leave them there to the Nightfort, and we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back. All right, that story's done for today. We're gonna go back to Jon and Jorah, right? So Jon and Jorah, they start talking about some of the few things that Jorah had learned, and they talk about the Night King and all that stuff. And so Jorah tells him that Jorah's from the north, right? He's heard a whole bunch of the stories. He's heard some of the legends, and one thing just particularly kept gnawing at him, right? And that is why all this is happening, or what's making this happen. And so he starts to kind of follow the rumors that he's heard throughout his life. Again, there's a lot of stories that come from there, but supposedly what he'd heard from the Night King, and the reason why the name was stricken from record and everything, is that, and the reason why he was able to survive for so long is because the King of Winter did not attack him immediately, because the King of Winter was actually his brother. So the legend says, the rumors say that the Night King, and this is actually confirmed by Old Nan. So let me just read by something that Old Nan said that she told Bran, right? She said some people believe the Night King was a Bolton, a Magnar of Skagos, an Umber, a Flint, a Nori, or a Woodfoot. However, she knows that the Night King, she says the Night King was a Stark of Winterfell and a brother to the King of Winter, and suggests his name was Brandon. Anyway, the Brandon thing doesn't really matter right now. But the point is, Old Nan is saying that she believed that it was Stark. So, rumor. Completely and 100% rumor, just scary stories and all that stuff. But Jorah Mormont grew up in the same location. He probably heard the rumors as well. And he started going back a little bit into if Sam sent him to check out the things from the Nightfort, then probably could it be the Nightfort, or could it be what happened before? So he started looking into the Warg King. And he remembers, because again, he remembers the story of the Warg King and the war, all that stuff. And here's what happened to the Warg King, right? The Starks killed him. They killed his sons, Beasts, and Greenseers, who were also kind of psychics, but took his daughters as prizes. Okay? So the Starks took the Warg King's daughters as prizes. Again, this is before the wall was built, which means that the Starks have if he took the daughters, they most likely reproduce with them, which means that the Starks that's where the Starks get their Warg DNA from. That's where they get their Warg DNA. That's why they're able to go into animals, because they have that in their blood, because of the Warg King all the way back there. So he starts doing a little bit of the math, and he starts going like, all right, what do wargs do? Wargs go, and this is something that he's working out along with Jon. All right, it's not, Jorah is not a genius here, right? He's following the breadcrumbs with the help of Jon, because Jon's also trying to figure it out. So he's like, all right, so the Night King was supposedly banned and his name was forbidden, but the rumors say that it was a Stark who has Warg's blood and who who was giving sacrifices to the others. Now, from what I understand, in Craster's Keep, for those of you who don't remember, Craster is the father of Gilly, and he was the dude who banged his daughters and gave the babies to the Night King. Actually, I think the first time we see the Night King is one of the babies that Craster gives one of the others, and that's when he turns them blue. Anyway, so they start adding up all the info. So the Night King was giving his seed to his queen, to his white, blue-eyed queen. Then they were also making sacrifices to the others. However, Craster did the same thing, and for some reason they only wanted males. And then for some reason and then Bran told Jon that the children of the forest told them that they turn people. So is it possible? Again, this is a lot of stuff. This is a lot of mumbo jumbo, and it's all going on through Jon's head. Is it possible that the reason why they made sacrifice to the others wasn't to kill the babies, but it was so that the others could turn them into themselves, to turn them into more members of their own species? And is the reason why they only give them males so that they could not keep reproducing, right? Because if you only have males, you're kind of screwed a little bit, right? You have one male, 10 females, you can reproduce really quickly. If you mostly have males, your numbers are going to suck. It's you only have one female that can reproduce. Bad. So is it possible they were trying to stifle their numbers? Yes, no, maybe, all speculation. But here's the kicker. And this is the thing that kind of Jorah and Jon realized at the same time. That if the reason why they were doing the Night's King did sacrifices to the White Walkers, and Craster did the sacrifices to the White Walkers, if the reason why they were doing so is that they needed seed, they needed more numbers so they could reproduce and expand, then that means that if all the living men and women are south of the wall, then Jon's the reason why the Night King's coming south. So, all right, I'm gonna leave it right there. They got a bunch of information there, Bran and Jon, and it's not really bueno. So I'll stop it right there. I think it's enough before we continue. So any comments, questions, or suggestions, like I said before, you can find me still at Dario the Show or Super Dario _world. Hopefully this made sense to you. I kind of needed to get the stories of the Nightfort out of the way, so hopefully you enjoyed that. And let me see, what am I going to do tomorrow? I still don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I don't think I have time to do live stream today for video games, so I'll try. I'll try to get in some Modern Warfare in there. Oh, now that I think about it, I was actually pretty... You know what? I'll save it. This exit's been horrible. Anyway, as always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you again tomorrow.